Alrighty, we're back. Sorry about that. I've hit the wrong button. So, without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Jonathan, myself, over here to my right. Wait, wrong hand. To my right. These hands things. Over here to my right. That guy over there. My mirror's messed up again. Yeah. So, yeah, this gets me every time. I'm such a professional. Whee! Okay. You getting this, John? You gonna take over now? Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, I am Jonathan Albin, a game master with 48 years of experience behind the shield, as it were. And today we're going to be talking about a property that I developed with a couple of associates back in the 90s called Mortis, Mortis. And I don't have a copy of it to show you because we are in the production phase of it right now, so it'll be out and available fairly soon. Until it is, we're just going to be publishing it ourselves, and we will be doing an intro video and a playthrough video on that game in a few days. I actually have the video already cut. I just need to go back in and edit it. And so, would you stop looking at me like that? It's not my fault. I can't help it if the camera does this. Hang on a second. It's your turn to talk anyway. No, well, not me. Not me. Him. Take him. All right. So, thanks, Jonathan, for that carryover. And for those of you that are viewing this for the first time, yes, I am noob, NEWB, at this. So, ironically, I've been doing video for several years as a live streamer for Twitch. I used to run large game, well, six player game groups on the Nikos RPG channel, and we just started back doing videos in the last few months, and I'm still working on my production skills. And I've got a little Stream Deck box so that I could actually set this stuff up to do auto commands, but I haven't got that all figured out yet. So we're going to be talking about Mortis tonight, and the Mortis roleplay. See there, you know that I'm a roleplay guy, right? Role playing games is my forte, but I dabble in a little bit of everything. So the Nikos RPG is my big baby, but my smaller baby, my older child, if you will, is Mortis. And to give a little bit of insight into that, I want to talk about its origins and the background behind it. And this might be some insider information, and given the size of the other companies that I've worked with before that are not involved with this property at all, this is going to be some insider information about some old companies, and this is like OG stuff. So if it's, I mean, OG is an old guy. The Mortis concept actually was started in a conversation or relationship with John Zinser of Alderac Entertainment Group and Jolly Blackburn, who now is the vice president of Kenzerco. Kenzerco, as you may know, is the publisher of the Hackmaster RPG, and John Zinser is John Zinser is was the CEO of Alderac Entertainment Group, AEG. So I'll let Jonathan here take over, and I'll probably just sit mute for a minute. So it's your turn, Jonathan. Okay, thank you. So Mortis started in a long time ago. There was a before or shortly after the launch, I should say, of Magic: The Gathering. There was a hurricane of activity that formed in the cosmos, so to speak, by the lightning in a bottle that had been the origins of Magic: The Gathering. And in the shadow of that monstrous launch, which surprised the marketplace, the elements of trading card being merged with the concept of a competition or combat magical effect game merged together and when it did, the world just kind of lost its mind. Every company that was in publishing realized how effective a economic source the trading cards would be, even before they understood the whole idea of valuation of cards and manipulation of the marketplaces and all the drama that would come from it. There were companies that were racing literally around the world trying to get a handle on this. In the relatively short aftermath from that creation, every company was scrambling to come up with a game, and so Alderac Entertainment Group came to me. Actually, Jolly and John were actually sitting in their offices, and this is when Shadis magazine was the biggest thing that Alderac Entertainment Group did. The Shadis magazine was part of AEG, or Alderac Entertainment Group, and Jolly was very interested in finding a way to get into that marketplace as well. And so one afternoon when I went there and was hanging out with John and Jolly, John mentioned the fact that they needed to get a game published right away, and it was only literally weeks before the Origins Games Convention in San Jose, California. Back in those days, the Origins Games Fair and Expo moved around from city to city to city, and they were going to be in California for one of the few occurrences out here, and it was going to be in San Jose's area, Northern California, and they wanted to have a property, but they didn't have in their hands a viable card game. So I was a new publisher. I just recently, well, I wasn't even yet a publisher. I was a new games designer. I've been working with GeoHex to work out mechanics for a space game, a starship game called, I can't even remember what it was called now. I have to think about it. Full Thrust. And we were working with them to kind of streamline a rules mechanism for them, drawing on my success with the Star Trek adventures that I'd been running at the conventions in Los Angeles. And so I pitched. I said, I can get that done for you in a short period of time. He says, well, we need to be able to show it in 3 weeks. He says, that's not possible. And I said, I'll have a game for you in a week. And so I went home, and within 3 days, I came back. I finished the idea, and I came back and I pitched it to them, and they fell in love with it. And so I went to the local Kinko's and I printed up a bunch of prototypes under a different property name. The arenas that are actually found on the planet of Alderac. And by the way, if you didn't know this, possible some insider information here. Alderac Entertainment Group is based on Alderac, the game world that was designed by Jolly Blackburn for his adventures when he was a game master. So those Alderac Entertainment Group games they wanted the game based in the city of Grodmondre. Grodmondre, two words, Grodmondre, was going to be the name of the arena, and that was the primary place they wanted their combat game to go. And they recognized that the Magic the Gathering's element was on the aspects of Magic, and so they wanted it to be more on the aspects of martial combat. And so the rules I came back with for Grad Mandre were specifically based on that. And to add to that, I had a very good friend of mine named Randy Wooster, who lives in Kentucky now. But Randy Wooster was very familiar with parimutuel wagering, which of course is the method that they use for betting on horse races and such. And we didn't want to play on the nuance of gambling as a primary, but we thought it would be kind of a clever way for the people who could not participate in the demos, because we didn't anticipate we'd have enough space for that. We anticipated we would have somewhat of an audience come and play, wager they were just tokens in the game. So don't freak out on me here. But they would then be able to wager on their favorite gladiators within the arenas, and the gladiators, of course, were the players of Mortis. And by talking about the history of this, I'm trying to set up a framework for why we got to where we got to. As my grandfather would say, I'm telling you this story to tell you another story. So at any rate, we went ahead and we finished that game in 5 days. And so we took on the moniker of Just in Time Productions, because that was how fast we could produce a game concept. And we took that fully fleshed game concept up to the Origins Games Fair and Expo in San Jose, California. And man, that was a debacle. We were a mess. We had everybody piled into an RV. A very good friend of mine, Dave Peterson, had an RV at the time, and we drove his RV all the way up to San Jose from Southern California. It's about an 8 or 9 hour drive normally, and with an RV, it's even longer. And we, of course, had the wonderful drama of blowing out tires and having to stop for water for the engine. I mean, it was fun. I mean, it was terrifying, but it was fun. So John and Jolly and the rest of the Alderac team, myself, Dave Peterson, Randy Wooster, and a couple of others piled into this RV and drove up there. And when we first set up, we had set up to run 4 players in a match, and then have the parimutuel wagering on the matches. And then when a person was knocked out of the arena, then somebody else could step in, and then he would be, the new guy on the block. And the game mechanics didn't really afford it in that form. But one of the things we noted is that the gladiators, the warriors, wanted to talk smack before they sat down at the table. And then once they sat down, they realized the intensity of the game. And the play of it is what made the game dramatically exciting, was the fact that the people wagering on the games would actually stay for like hours and watch the other players play. Many of them didn't even want to play. They just wanted to push tokens. Now, the mechanic of the game allowed for those who were backing a certain warrior or gladiator to actually put prizes and awards and stuff directly into the game from the outside. And so in some ways, it started, I think they kind of, and this is way before Blizzard had launched even the original Warcraft. This is how long ago this was. But there wasn't any concept of the micro purchase and stuff. But I think in a way we kind of created that, because we were able to coordinate with the booth that sold Alderac's other properties, their magazines and such, to allow points with purchase. So when they would buy a product, then they could put those points into the game mechanic, and it was a hoot. And I believe we had a total of 180 signups and involvement at some level, and I know we had more than 50 people we taught how to play the game, and we didn't even have a copy we could sell. We were literally playing with the prototypes, and it went over like hotcakes. And so that was my first taste of being on the business side of a product. And even though I was there, or my compensation had already been the fact that I was getting to travel this distance and be a part of this. So I was one of the, if you will, again, OG, I was one of the people who traded my hours for exposure. But I think in some ways that led directly to my getting hired later for Gamma. But let me have Jonathan, interviewer, get a word in edgewise, because I haven't been letting him talk at all. He's been standing there staring at me for this entire time. Hang on a second. Make sure I look at the right one here. Alrighty. Wow. That guy talks a lot. He talks a lot. And he's got good stuff to say, and I'm really glad to be a part of the work that we're doing. But man, so while he's talking about all that, let me tell you a bit about the concept of Mortis. Mortis is a 9th iteration Nikos RPG game in that the setting is the world of Nikos in the beginning days of the 9th iteration. The 9th iteration formally launches once the Kickstarter rolls out, but at this point, in the pre-9th iteration time frame, the game of Mortis is fundamentally part of the culture of the world. And to give the whole story would take a long time, but suffice it to say the Nikos campaign has been running ongoing since 1974 without fail, an average of 1 game per week for that entire duration, from 1974 until the present. And so the story feeds back on itself. Pardon me. Feeds back on itself roughly once every 6.5 years real time, or roughly 1,500 years or so in game time. So collectively, up until this point, we have roughly 12,000 years of in-game history that has actually been played through, and it's taken 48 years to play through the recursive arc 7-8 times. So we are preparing with the launch of Nikos RPG to herald the launch of the 9th iteration. So the story of the game, the lore, is that the Middle Kingdoms, which are the nations that are currently in operation in the Adventures of Nikos, which are concurrently going right now, 3 different sessions per week, are feeding into that story the tail end of a 6-year arc. We have players that are still sitting at the tables that, if you will, not right now, but on Sundays and Mondays and Wednesdays, we have games groups that are continuing, and on Sundays and Wednesdays, we have players that have been within the story for the entire 6.5 years of the 8th iteration. And so the kingdoms that are focused on in Mortis are the ones that are still in power and drama right now in the 8th iteration. So these cities have come into a situation where their leadership has been challenged by an outside force known as the Trade Lords, and very few people know anything about them. But the Trade Lords have come in and fundamentally were responsible for stopping what had been successor wars. The nations, these capitals, these kingdoms have been at war for quite a long time, and with the amount of bloodshed they were causing, these trade lords have come in, ceased the conflict, resolved the successor wars, and are now holding their leverage on these 5 kingdoms. The trade lords are holding them down and keeping them in line to create the the unanimity of a kingdom. And to do that, they've made it so that all warfare has been replaced by Mortal Kombat in arenas, and therefore each of the 4 functioning kingdoms that remain have forces in the game. And so therefore you as a player are a warrior turned gladiator who is vying for the honor of your nation, but you're also attempting to elevate yourself, because according to the edicts of the trade lords, these warriors will gain fame and honor once they have achieved the nearly impossible goal of winning 10 matches. Now, a match in the game is actually 3 it's 3 games to complete a match. And so you have to have won 2 out of 3 games 10 times in order to gain your freedom, and freedom to elevate. In order for that elevation to occur, you have to have accomplished that without dying. And of course, in a game like this, there is still conflict that can lead to mortality. And so the objective of the game is either twofold: either to defeat your opponent. I always got to figure out which camera I'm looking at. Yeah. Defeat your opponent in Mortal Kombat in terms of, taking them out, injuring them so they are removed from the arena, or to have elevated yourself by fame with the crowd. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jonathan, because now I've been talking too much. John, you can actually take the floor. It's perfectly okay. I just got to make sure I have the right button here. Jonathan, are you still with us? You're still staring out there into space? Yes, I'm still here. Yeah, you didn't quite put me to sleep. So, Mortis, the mechanics of Mortis, you've described a little bit about the theory, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the mechanics. Or you've talked about the story. I'm going to talk a little bit about the mechanics. Actually, this is backwards. I should be the one talking about the story. So let me continue with the story, and then I'll let him talk about. No, it's okay. Like I said, rookie. So the mechanics of the game are, it's a card game, dueling game with a championship wrestling-ish kind of a feel, in that the game is played by the characters in the story are the players using trading cards to trade smacks, so to speak. Each card you play is a get off of this stuff. Each card you play is an attack or a feint or something in combat, and where the combat goes is up to the player. And one of the keys to the game is card attrition. Once you only have a limited number of cards in your hand, and once you are out of cards in your hand, there's nothing you can do to defend against damage coming in. So literally, it's a strategy game but you're deciding, well, it's a tactical game. You're deciding which cards you're going to play in what order in order to do the ultimate damage to your opponent and take them out while preserving your. But you really don't do too much of it in terms of defense, because it's a brutal game. You're in a gladiator combat. So the bout is broken into rounds, and those rounds are played out at a numeric value that you have to achieve with the card ascending values being played. So if a person plays a 4, that adds 4 to the clock, and then you're trying to get done with the combat before you get to 31. If you can come out hitting exactly 31 with the card you play, you get to do some damage to your opponent. If you play a card of your designated suit, you get to do some damage to your opponent. If you play any face card, you can do damage to your opponent. And there's also dirty tricks and sneaky moves and things like that to get some drama into it as well. But the play of the game is rapid fire. It means that an entire match is one game is played in about 15 to 20 minutes. A match, therefore, is well under an hour, and best 2 out of 3 wins the match. You have to get 10 matches. I've never in the time that I've played, I've never had in all the times that I've run this game, going back all the way to the 90s, we've never had anybody accomplish the goal of becoming a free brand, which is the term that refers to a champion who has accomplished this rather titanic goal of 10 matches. But there's a lot more to it than just the specifics of that. But let me turn it back over to Jonathan. I think he wants to talk a little bit more about the lore, because we have to get kind of a feel for who these countries are, these nations are. Just a second. Jonathan, it's your turn. It's your turn. Alrighty, at least he's staring off into space this time, instead of staring at me so strongly. So, ooh, beautiful music. Yes, it's my clock to let me know we are at the witching hour. It is midnight. So, we are going to continue for, looks like we can go probably another 25 minutes or so. So, the lore are these based on 4 kingdoms, and these 4 nations, those people who are playing in Nikos right now, when they hear the names, they're going to go, oh, I know where that is. So the first of the cities is the City of Empires, which is known as Corum. And Corum has a legacy or a history of being supported by a group known as the Ordnung, which are the giants, and the giants have supported and upheld the empire, to the point where the empire's operation is arguably one of the bloodiest in all of Nikos, because they utilize for their legal system the concept of might makes right, and therefore all of their own internal conflicts are resolved by trial by combat. So they are arguably some of the best warrior stock, if you will, in the world. And the one element that makes them a little bit on the grim side is that because bloodshed is their code of honor, they do agree with the concept of animal sacrifice and such. So they're a very bloody nation, and therefore, from a standard deck of cards, they are represented by the suit of hearts. And so the nation of Corcorum is that country, and they are classically known as the Empire, but they also are known as the Corumites. Second of the cities are gosh, I'm racking my brain for the name of the city. The city of Slumber, which is in the center of an area known as the Swarthir Plains, and their warriors tend to be range based, so they use archery as their primary source, and therefore they are represented by the spade symbol that looks a bit like an arrowhead. So the Great War that occurred was between the Swarthiri, which are known as culturally as they're known as barbarians, because they don't fight fair, they fight at range, they move more stealthily, they don't recognize the concepts of trial by combat as much as the Empire does. So you've got the Empire and you have the barbarians, which are the Swarthiri. The third of the factions that's involved in this particular story are the people of Tenerife, and the people of Tenerife are, I guess you would say, they are somewhat culturally bankrupt. They are financial, fiduciary, economic powerhouses, and therefore they are represented by the diamonds. So the diamonds are therefore the uh, financiers for the empire. They live and die by the fact that the empire exists, and so the two of them have a truce, and hence they are both the diamonds are being spent on bloodshed and blood diamonds. So it's a dangerous concept. But the two bloody kingdoms, the Tenerife and the Koramites, are on one side of the warfare. On the other side, as I already mentioned, you have the um, barbarians of Swarthir, but you also have a mystical aspect, and that mystical aspect comes from the nation state of Florin. And Florin tend to deal combat or conflict with the War Club as their primary emblem, and so uh, the Floridians? I don't know what you call them. The people of Florin are known as the Outlanders because they are arguably not as quite as entangled, and their mindset is rather outlandish. And so they represent the clubs, and they are the backers and supporters of the Swarthiri. So therefore, they take on the two black suits of a card deck. So each of these factions carries its own element to the game. Now, before we go any further with that, Jonathan, you want to tell them a little bit about the mechanical aspect and the relationship with your family and how that all got started? Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. What I would like to refer to in particular is the fact that I have been an aficionado of games, as I've already described, going all the back to way back to when I was 11 in the early 70s. But truth be told, my game experience goes even further back than that because my grandfather was he was my mentor. He is the person that I've pretty much stylized a lot of my life upon in terms of attitudes and things like that. Not so much his demeanor or anything like that, but and he was as clean shaven as I am bearded. So that was my maternal grandfather, my mother's dad, Carl, and Carl was the kind of a person that if he didn't have a deck of cards in his hand or playing pieces from Chinese checkers or something, he didn't know what to do with himself. Literally, he would get up to go to work. He had to be at the power plant by 8 o'clock, and so at 6:30 he'd be on his way to his favorite coffee shop on the way to work. And there at the coffee shop, they'd play cribbage, and good lord, did he love that game! And I played every kind of card game imaginable. I think I know 127 different card games. I don't know if I could all write them all down anymore, or even play all of them anymore. But at one point, I knew 127 different games to be played with a standard deck of cards or multiple decks of cards. And cribbage is by all means my very favorite card game in the world, in terms of generic, just sit down and play a game with your friends kind of thing. It's clearly a casual game. It's not meant for the crunchy world of board games or the much more dynamic game of role play games, the genre of role play games. But it is the basis, if you will, for Mortis. I created Mortis as somewhat of an homage to the more common game of cribbage because it takes into account both the dynamic, points to the head kind of fast action at the beginning of the game, and then each round has a element for what we received from the experience with Grad Mandre was the concept that the players want to feel invested in their own skills, and so therefore the hand reading portion of cribbage converts to the grandstand phase of Mortis. And I dedicated the game. As a matter of fact, the dedication in the book is to two angels, to my daughter, Chera, who died in 1997, for the life that she exuded while she was here, and to my grandfather Carl, who gave games life for me. So the nuance and element of play is the fast action, dynamic interaction that really lets the players engage in such a way that they feel invested in the game match over match. And while it doesn't have the gritty realism of standard role play games, nonetheless, it is a game that you can easily role play, and that is really what appeals to me about it. So we're gonna pontificate for a lot longer, but I'm actually running out of steam here in terms of my voice, and I'm sure Jonathan's got the same problem as well. But I did want to let you know that we anticipate the release of Nikos RPG. The Kickstarter should be launching sometime in December, and then before that, Mortis, the Mortis card game, will be available again exclusively through Board Game Paradise in Redlands, California, or through Nikos RPG once we get it up in a few weeks. But Mortis will be available to be purchased. If you want to know more information about that, make sure you remember to like this episode, subscribe if you haven't before, and you can check out our merch page that includes the PDF prototype of Nikos RPG, which is available at nikosrpg.com on the shop page. So, Jonathan, do you have anything else you want to add here at the end? I know I've talked most of the way through. Hang on a second. It's your turn. Alrighty, so I want to thank you, Jonathan, for being here again. I know that had to take a lot of time out of your day to actually move over there from here. Really, really appreciate you being here. I do like your style. Great hat. And I wanted to make sure to let everyone know that in addition to all of the stuff you see going on right now, we do have a Patreon account. And so if you want to become a supporter and really help us to push this forward, I would like to get to the point where we are able to produce content every day, and that will take getting our house in order in other ways. And so make sure you do if you do get a chance, go by Board Game Paradise in Redlands. If you can, come and play with us on Mondays. And he's already said everything else I needed to say. So I wanted to thank you for being with us today, and I hope to see you guys all at some other point. And if you don't subscribe, quite frankly, I think I'll be beside myself. Have a great night.